Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Oklahoma State Fairgrounds Arena. I'm Brett Kuttner, along with Margo King. We're here for another tremendous championship battle on the U.S. Hot Rod Association National Event Trail of Mud Racing. And, Margo, this is going to be another fantastic mud racing championship.
We're not low on talent, and they brought their most exotic equipment with them.
I'll tell you, along with action on the 100-foot-long championship mud bog course, we have some very special exhibition pulling machines, including one of the first dragsters ever built for pulling.
And we're not used to seeing these dragsters showing up here pulling that down the drag strip.
It's going to be amazing. But, of course, along with all this action, we still have, as always, the battle of the monster trucks.
And when it's Big Book against the Virginia Beach Beast, watch out.
That's true. Two of the most exotic monsters ever built. The king of the monsters, Bigfoot, against one of the very few tank monster trucks running, the Virginia Beach Beast of Bill Townsend, driver by KATZ. We've got a lot of action on tap tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, stick with us. We'll be right back for championship U.S. Hot Rod Association Motorsports action. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back at the Oklahoma State Fairgrounds Arena for the first run of this championship mud bog program brought to you by the United States Hot Rod Association. And Margo King is with us as we get ready for our first competitor from Denver, Colorado, the 24-year-old puller, Matt ACKER.
And luck of the draw has put Matt into the #1 slot. And a lot of the racers like that nice, drier platform to get grip on.
That's very true. The 460 cubic inch Ford-powered Bronco, as you can see, a fiberglass replica of a Bronco, leaves the starting line and digs in deep. And ACKER, trying to keep the throttle going, takes it out the back door. And ACKER obviously has got to be happy with that first run out the back door of the pit, and that will give him an elapsed time that indeed will put him out in front, at least for the time being. ACKER, indeed, a little bit disappointed. You can see him shaking his head. And you saw the machine start to spin the tires a little bit when it hit the water just on the top of the mud. And as the first machine out, he is the one that has to dig the pits through the competition, or the ruts, I should say, through the pit. In the slow-mo, we can see, indeed, a lot of tire spin as the machine first dives into the pit.
And he just didn't quite get that planing that the mud boggers are after. He just never got the front end high enough. And you're right, he was digging in through the mud bog, making it a pretty slow run for him at 4.44 seconds.
Indeed, that will be the elapsed time mark to beat at this point. 4.44 seconds for Matt ACKER with the 460 cubic inch powered Ford Bronco. And again, from a different angle, you can see that the machine never really, as you said, Margo, got the launch that it needed. The objective in the sport of mud bog racing is to have the machine more or less skip across the top of the mud with these particular vehicles in the modified class.
And he got a jolt at the end of that run. You can see his body bouncing around in that roll cage.
No question, from a standing start, 100 feet of mud in 4 seconds takes an awful lot of braking ability at the end of the course. Well, pulling up now is Lee CORUM out of Colorado Springs, Colorado, another one of the high country mud racers. And Lee and co-partner Ron Schaefer have put together one of the most absolutely incredibly state-of-the-art machines in mud racing.
And it's really hard to believe that this vehicle started out as a 6,500-pound tractor tire vehicle. And it just kept modifying, and that's what he ended up with. Incredible.
Well, the machine originally started in a super modified class, which allows unlimited tire size. But here in the modified category, these machines are using Department of Transportation approved street legal tires. Now, those tires are modified to a certain extent, and they can be no taller than 44 inches in height. But indeed, this machine has now become one of the top modifieds in the western part of the nation. Back on the line, this is Lee CORUM moving up to the starting line with the fiberglass-bodied FUNNYCAR style, incredibly strong running Jeep using a 482 cubic inch fuel-injected Chevrolet Rat motor for power. Now, there is no nitrous oxide injection on this machine. It is burning alcohol, a 980 horsepower power plant without the benefit of extra oxygen. And CORUM runs into problems. A lot of tire spin off the starting line, and he knows it.
What a disappointing run for him.
The ground crew checking out to make sure the cables are hooked up, and they will be towing him out. And CORUM has got to be disappointed. His crew chief, Ron Schaefer, was hoping for a much better attempt this afternoon. We can see Doug Hansen, the event director for the U.S. Hot Rod Association, talking things over with the driver of the fiberglass-bodied Jeep.
In his real life, as a person in normal everyday life, Lee owns a salvage yard, and maybe he'll be digging through that for some new parts for his car.
Well, it's interesting that the machine seemed to leave at low RPM. As you can see on the replay here, the machine uses an automatic transmission, but look, the right front tire, or actually the left front tire, never moved. A broken axle, obviously. Something wrong with the front differential, and as you can see, power was never transmitted to the left side front wheel.
An agony of defeat.
Well, that is a major upset, as no doubt Len CORUM was considered one of the toughest drivers coming out of this first round of competition. Now, remember, this is an elapsed time competition, and the two quickest elapsed time drivers after the first round, which actually determines the championship, will be coming out for a very popular, what is known as a grudge match.
And now he's being hooked up with the cable, and they're now have hooked it onto the back of his vehicle, and there's the dozer, the payloader, that's pulling him out of the mud.
As a matter of fact, each and every machine that moves up to the starting line gets hooked up to that 3/4-inch steel cable. And through the use of a block and tackle pulley system, the machines are actually pulled out quite easily. The next machine coming out is without a doubt one of the home state favorites here in Oklahoma City. From Perry, Oklahoma, Larry Jarrett with one of the first supercharged mud racers in competition tonight, the incredible Locomotion. Earlier, Margo King had a chance to talk with Larry Jarrett's wife.
Cosmetically, one of the most unique vehicles here tonight, Locomotion. Carol Jarrett, co-owner of this vehicle, along with your husband. Where did you guys come up with this configuration?
Well, after thinking and lots of paperwork and designing, they come up with it. Our son and his dad come up with it after 4 years. It just worked on it during the 4 years when we didn't have anything else to do in our machine shop.
Now, did they feel it was aerodynamic?
Yes. They worked towards the lightness of it, and the sprint car design, they figured it was faster than usual.
Now, how much does it weigh?
2,600 pounds.
Well, we'll see if this light car, aerodynamically designed, is the ticket that works here tonight.
Larry Jarrett now getting hooked up on the starting line. The machine using a 468 cubic inch Chevrolet engine with a 671 GMC supercharger on top and fuel injection burning methanol. One of the most powerful mud racers you'll see at competition. And Margo, if anybody is going to break into the 2-second zone at this early stage of the game, this man can do it.
You've got that one. When they put this machine on the dyno, the needle could not read what that motor was putting out. It pegged out at 1,000 horsepower, and he figures it's about 1,300. This is only his 5th indoor race here tonight. One of the really beginning riders, but what a sophisticated machine he's brought out to the circuit.
The state-of-the-art suspension on this machine enables it to handle a phenomenal amount of horsepower. And keep in mind that these trucks and vehicles are using, again, street-legal Department of Transportation approved tires. If nothing else, it is that stock tire format that allows the supercharged and fuel-injected machines to compete on an even keel. It doesn't matter how much horsepower you've got to be able to put it through the mud correctly with those tires, and that's a limiting factor.
Another interesting thing about this vehicle, he does not use an automatic transmission, but an SCS transmission, and it only has a forward and a reverse, kind of a slippery clutch.
Jarrett leaves the starting line, and he is on the best run of the night. Unbelievable ride for Larry Jarrett, and if that's not number one, it's going to be so close. 4.44 seconds was the mark to beat. Doug Manacker, in the back in black Bronco was leading the way, but Jarrett puts down a phenomenal run. Take a look at this starting line launch on the replay, Margo.
Doesn't even look like he's set up straight for the course, but for a novice driver, he looks like a pro from here.
Well, right now you can see the machine carrying the front end, just skimming the top of the mud on the brakes as he crosses the finish line. The elapsed time, number one for the Oklahoma Locomotion, 3.10 seconds.
Let's get another shot of what would be deemed really a perfect mud bog run. Look at those front tires just skimming along the top of that mud. You wouldn't believe that there's 3 foot of slush under there.
I'll tell you, the tire speed is phenomenal. That machine had an unbelievable amount of horsepower off the starting line, and once it did indeed get the traction necessary to put it through in 3 seconds, it just flat flew. So Larry Jarrett takes over the number one spot with the supercharged Chevrolet from Perry, Oklahoma. And we indeed are going to have to see some phenomenal runs through this pit to top that kind of performance.
Absolutely.
We will be back with more championship mud racing action from the United States Hot Rod Association 19 Championships in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma in a moment.
Oklahoma City plays host to the 4th largest fair in the world. The man who coordinates that fair, Don Holtz, President and General Manager of the State Fair of Oklahoma. Don, now this facility doesn't just host a state fair.
Well, you're right, Margo, and welcome to you and ESPN to Oklahoma City, but you're absolutely correct. We do about 1,300 events other than the fair and on the fairgrounds each year. A large number of motorized events, including 3 U.S. Hot Rod Association approved shows.
Now, do these motorsport events draw a lot of people?
Oh, you bet. You bet. Oklahomans are very knowledgeable in motorsports, and we draw from all over the state in addition to surrounding states. So it's a tremendous asset to Oklahoma City.
Terrific, and we're hoping that they're going to enjoy the show right here tonight. We're back with the mud bog racing here at the Oklahoma Arena, and we've got Nitro Express on the staging line. Hey, Clay, wake up. Your race is just in a couple minutes. How can you be sleeping?
After 9 years, you get used to it. You just get tired of waiting around and stuff.
Well, I know. We see this buggy a lot on the circuit. Have you done anything new to it lately?
Yes, I just put a $1,000 torque converter in it.
Now, what is a new torque converter going to do to this thing to make it work better?
Well, it brings it up from 4,000 to 6,200 RPM.
Which translates into what as far as performance? More horsepower on the track. Well, now that we've got Clay up, he'll be ready to go out on the racetrack and test out that new torque converter. And we're back, and Clay is getting his helmet on, preparing for his run. Safety equipment is always an important factor in any type of racing, including mud bog racing, even though you have a soft impact point there.
As we pointed out, one of the only machines still utilizing the small block Chevrolet engine with nitrous oxide injection. Clay Langley, the old pro, as it were, from Independence, Missouri. 45 years old. He's been a championship racer on the USHRA Association Tour since its inception. One of the very first competitors on the national tour. Clay Langley uses nitrous oxide injection via the throttle. As soon as he stops on that loud pedal, the nitrous oxide injection goes to work in the fuel injection system, and almost 400 extra horsepower kicks in on this incredible 700 horsepower small block Chevy. Using a 1932 Austin Bantam roadster body, similar to those used in drag racing. Clay Langley's machine is also one of the lightest on the series. Taking the green, a lot of tire spin, and Clay doing everything he can to keep the machine moving, and he's going to be able to, a lot of smoke out of the engine. Clay Langley digs in down at the 85-foot marker, and that, Margo, is a major upset.
He was giving it all he's got, all he had. He was putting his body into it, trying to literally push his car up the lane, but just could not get a launch.
Well, you can see Clay leaves the starting line pretty cleanly, but pretty soon the engine starts to lose power, and when it does, the machine sinks like a rock. As we pointed out, the objective is to stay on top of that mud, not to dig in deep. Clay trying to stay with the machine, but now the smoke starts to come out of the valve cover gaskets, and the engine is overheating, and I'll tell you what, Clay Langley has had a rough night, because Margo, as you just heard, not only did Clay have that horrible run, but he was also disqualified for leaving the starting line too early.
And when he left the starting line, you can see him just like he dropped off the platform and dove into the mud bog. Not the strategy to get across the mud.
I'll tell you, Clay is stuck with the small block Chevrolet in this combination for a good long time, but as he pointed out in our interview earlier, he indeed has a brand new machine getting ready to come out. A little bit of fire out of the exhaust pipes there. He may have had a problem with the valve train, an intake valve hanging open, and there, folks, is the look of an unhappy mud racer. And Margo, this is indeed one of the most outrageous mud racers you could ever ask for.
Absolutely, but what a disadvantage the kid is driving at with no cut tires on this vehicle.
I'll tell you, this is Dale Terry from Choctaw, Oklahoma. And Dale, along with his wife Donna, campaigned this machine mostly at regional events throughout the Midwest. Now, as you pointed out, it's using chrome stock street tires. And even more importantly, it's a small block Chevrolet engine, 327 cubic inches, that uses regular gasoline, no racing methanol, carburetors, doesn't even have nitrous oxide injection. Now, at a weight of 3,200 pounds, this 64 Volkswagen Bug is certainly the underdog. If you like to pull for the little guy, here's the man you should be rooting for.
He better be stocked up on his flubber if he wants to get through that mud bog.
Dale Terry moving up to the starting line. The Big Bad Bug. One of the most popular machines in this part of the country. This is one of his first times in the USHRA Association National Event Circuit. And indeed, with a small block Chevrolet power plant and such a short wheelbase, this thing is a handful to drive. Take a look. Hydraulic one-piece lift-off body. The rear-mounted small block Chevrolet engine getting quite a round of applause. The body back down, and Dale Terry now looks around at the starting line crew who will stage him up on the line. They're telling him to watch the green flag at the finish line, clearing out the small block Chevrolet. A lot of tire spin. Dale trying to keep it in the throttle, and it doesn't look good, Margo.
Oh, that much tire spin on the starting platform, and you're bound not to have a good run.
Now, you'll notice the green flag is still out because Dale is still moving. The machine, up there goes the red flag as he finally did bobble just a little bit. No forward progress. And as you can see, if nothing else, he cut a wide path through that pit. And again, the look of disappointment. These guys have a tremendous mark to shoot for right now. 3.10 seconds by the locomotion.
But a great sport. He knows he comes into this event as an underdog, so he just wants to make a good showing.
Well, the replay, you can see the machine actually had one of the best starting line launches we saw. Now, he was trying to cut a path through the mud by cutting both diagonally across the track, and indeed it didn't work. Now, you can also see the engine missing a little bit back there, so there were apparently some problems with the small block Chevrolet power plant. But meanwhile, Dale just had to hang on as that thing hit rock bottom rather quickly. Again, watching a starting line launch, there was nothing wrong with that lead.
Just a little bit too much wheel spin. I just don't think he had enough speed to really get his momentum going. But for the only Volkswagen on the USHRA circuit, not too bad.
Now, considering the fact that the machine does weigh in at a solid 600 pounds heavier than most of the machines we've seen, it is an uphill battle, but still an outrageous piece of equipment. Dale Terry from Choctaw, Oklahoma, coming out of the mud pit. But indeed, we've got plenty more championship mud racing action here at the 1988 Winter Nationals Championships. We'll be back in just a minute.
If you're...
Never before in Oklahoma have you been exposed to such...
We're back at the Oklahoma State Fairgrounds Arena in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, as we continue action at the 1988 U.S. Association Mud Racing Winter Championships. Margo, this is probably one of the more unique machines we'll see here tonight.
It's unique in the fact that it's the most stock machine here tonight. Other than the motor and the cut tires, of course, this thing is DOT approved in every sense of the word. And along with this machine not being that radical except for the motor, the experience that this driver has, Jackie Hunter, he's been a professional racer for 6 years. He's raced from Alaska to West Virginia. He can make this thing happen.
As you pointed out, the 1980 Jeep CJ7 body is basically unaltered with the exception of the openings in the hood for the exhaust headers. And with the DOT-approved tires, which are only marginally altered, this machine really could be streetable very easily. The power plant, however, is not an AMC motor. It's a 482 cubic inch Chevrolet big block with nitrous oxide injection. It uses two 4-barrel carburetors and a 3-speed turbo 350 automatic transmission. Now, Jackie is getting ready to hook up. The mark to beat still 3.10 seconds in our 100-foot-long championship mud bog course, 48 inches deep at the finish line. Jackie Hunter waits for the green light with the Douglas, Texas machine. There he goes. He's got a great run going. Phenomenal ride out the back door. Jackie Hunter on the brakes. And I'll tell you, Margo, that is one of the best national event runs that young man has ever made.
Now, Jeep owners, eat your heart out. In that transmission, there's stock gears front and rear. 307 on the front, 373s on the rear, and that pulled that bog just fine.
Well, you can hear the crowd. Let's take a look at the replay. Beautiful launch, a little bit of tire spin, but again, the Jeep, I should say, gets right up on top of the mud, and he is flying. Look at the grimace as Jackie Hunter tries to control the machine. Here's the elapsed time. 3.63 seconds. Good enough for the number 2 spot right now. Jack, look at that angle. Boy, that machine was just floating over the pit.
The motor was running flawlessly, and his driving experience really showed through.
Unbelievable ride for Jackie Hunter from Douglas, Texas. It's good enough for the number 2 spot for the basically stock 1980 Jeep CJ7 called Spare Parts. We're taking a look at what may be the toughest machine here tonight. This is Mitch Graham's machine called Hard Times, with Doug Marsh doing the driving from Jefferson City, Missouri. Another drag racing style funny car type machine using a fiberglass body of a 1987 Jeep CJ. Earlier, Margo had a chance to talk about the fact that this machine is one of the very few not using nitrous oxide injection.
Mitch, your new car, Hard Times, is really a beauty. A lot of horsepower probably comes out of that motor, but there's one thing that's obviously missing. Where's the nitrous bottle?
Well, at this time, we elected not to go with the nitrous. It's kind of an experimental motor, and we run a real high compression engine to compensate for the difference.
Other than the motor, is there any new frame geometry you're trying out?
Not really. It's basically the same thing that the rest of the guys are using. The only thing that we might have a little different than some of them is a 2-speed shiftable transmission.
All right, a 2-speed transmission. We'll see if that's going to work out there tonight.
Doug Marsh now gets ready to line up this incredible piece of equipment, a 482 cubic inch alcohol-injected or fuel-injected Chevrolet burning methanol fuel. And it looks like Marsh may have shut the engine down for just a minute as the ground crew talks things over with the Jefferson City, Missouri driver.
This is a class act right to the bone. Great paint job, his pit crew immaculately dressed in the pit area, and even the tires, which you have to cut by hand. It literally takes 20 hours per tire. They even look neatly cut.
Well, it's just a classic example of the professionalism that is coming into play with this sport now that it is indeed a national championship event series, courtesy of the U.S. Association. Now, it's interesting, Margo, that you should talk about the tires being cut. As we pointed out, these are Department of Transportation legal tires. but they can be altered. The drivers can actually take a hot soldering iron or a hot chisel and make the tread different than it is the way it comes from the tire factory. It helps these machines cut along the mud a lot easier.
And they can get quite creative, by the way. We'll see some unusual tread patterns before the night is complete.
It's very true. Every driver has his own ideas of how the tires should be. Marsh is lined up. As you can see, the starting line's getting a little bit slippery. Now, that's going to initiate a rather unique driving style for each and every machine up here. The driver's going to have to leave the starting line a little bit easier rather than a dry surface on the starting line where it's just a matter of mashing the throttle. It's going to take a little bit more ability, in fact, to get this machine off the starting line, considering the fact that it's capable of producing 800 horsepower.
And every driver picks his own combination, what he feels will make his car launch off the line better, in his choice of the way right down to how his motor is aspirated, the way his transmission is set up. It all counts.
I'll tell you, a great launch, but a little bit of tire spin problem in the mid-range. Nonetheless, Doug Marsh blasts out of the pit on what should be an excellent run. Now, the mark to beat is still 3.10 second by Larry Jarrett in the locomotion from here in Oklahoma. But indeed, you can see the driver shaking his head. Doug Marsh was not happy. The machine seemed to leave the starting line well. Taking a look at the replay, Margo, you can see, again, good throttle response, a lot of mud.
It looked like that LOCO 2-speed transmission got him off the line good, but he didn't maintain that planing that he really had to do.
Machine digging in just a little bit about the 85-foot mark again, and the elapsed time, 4.57 seconds, is good only for the number 4 spot, and that is unusual for Doug Marsh and Mitch Graham.
And you would think that in 4 seconds he wouldn't have time to realize whether it was a bad run or not, but these drivers know. As soon as he went through the gate, he knew that it was not a run as good as he was capable of pulling off.
Well, interestingly enough, with the LOCO 2-speed clutchless transmission, a driver has a much better feel than a shifting and automatic through the mud pit. The LOCO transmission is what is known as a planetary transmission. The driver can shift from first to second gear without having to use a clutch pedal. It's just a matter of throwing a lever back. But indeed, even with a $4,000 transmission, Doug Marsh still was unable to make it into the number 1 spot. The action will continue as we're coming down to some of the toughest machines in the history of mud racing at the very end here of the 1988 U.S. Hot Rod Association Winter Championships. We'll be back in a moment. Back to the 1988 U.S. Hot Rod Association Winter Mud Racing Championships, and pulling up to the starting line, Ken Crum with what is easily one of the most powerful machines today in the world of championship mud racing. The rear engine, super lightweight 2,200-pound Subaru with the obviously bizarre DeSoto Hemi engine behind the driver, gets ready to move up on the line. Margo, this thing's weird.
Hemis are certainly something you don't see much anymore, but a very efficient head design. Along with his B&J 3-speed air shifter, this key thing can fly.
The B&J transmission is very, very interesting. It is, as you pointed out, a 3-speed transmission. However, it uses compressed air to shift the gears. All Ken Crum has to do is hit a button on the steering wheel to hit every one of those 3 gears. Look at the flames coming out of the exhaust headers. A full load of methanol in the little 331 cubic inch Hemi DeSoto. And I should point out, as we said earlier, that this engine was taken out of production in 1958. I think they made the last DeSoto automobile back in 1958.
With 9 years of experience under the belt, it's not surprising that just 2 weeks ago, Ken made 1 pass, flipped his vehicle 3 times, came back, made his next pass, and won the event.
Wasn't his first crash either. This thing's been through hell. There's no question about it, but it is back and back strong. The mark to beat, 3.10 seconds, and this vehicle can do it. A phenomenal launch. Look at Ken Crum blast across the finish line on the brakes to avoid hitting the wall. Race fans, you just saw what is easily the number 1 spot of the Winter Championships. Unbelievable.
I thought he was going to go out for burgers there for a minute.
Watch this launch. You want to talk about power? Here's 1,000 horsepower on tap. Crum grimacing as he just rides it, shifting the gears by hitting the button, blasting out of the pit, and then it's time to get on the brakes. Ladies and gentlemen, what a ride. The elapsed time, 2.74 seconds for Ken Crum, blasting across the finish line. The spoiled brat Subaru proves once again why it is easily one of the strongest in this sport.
Can't blame the track anymore. He just proved you could make a perfect run on this.
Amazing, isn't it? After we saw all those problems at 20 feet, Ken Crum comes out with a 331 cubic inch DeSoto, and there is a happy man. blasting through at 2.74 seconds, taking the #1 spot by 36 hundredths of a second. That is going to be a mark to beat. But coming up, the driver we saw earlier on ESPN win the Chicago Fall Nationals, he'll be up next. And one thing that's amazing about the sport of mud racing is not only do you see the 2,200-pound lightweights, but you see nearly streetable machines like this.
This is a typical example of how a beginning racer will start to bring his car through a metamorphosis. His next project is to put a Jeep frame on this vehicle, making it lighter, and then he's going to put in a new rear end, another thing that makes it lighter. He's a beginner and he's just starting. Let's see how he does.
From Jacksonville, Texas, Alan Russell in the machine called Too Short, a 1974 Chevy Camaro with a 427 big block. This is the heaviest machine we've seen in the mud tonight, 3,400 pounds of Chevrolet. He leaves the starting line and not a bad launch. He's got the throttle going, but now she starts to sink. And as a matter of fact, Alan Russell himself got out of the throttle. He knew he wasn't going anywhere. And again, we talk about the lightweight of these machines. Trying to put a 3,400-pound full-bodied Chevrolet through the mud is awfully difficult.
And I think this one actually weighs in as the very heaviest vehicle here tonight.
As you can see, leaving the starting line, a little bit of a dodge to the left, and Alan Russell had to correct pretty seriously there. He stayed in the throttle, but actually it was because of that correction with the steering wheel, the machine lost momentum and dug in deep. He stayed with the throttle a little bit, but not long enough to hurt the engine while it was stationary. And in his first ever USHRA Association National Championship event, Alan Russell fails to make it to the finish line. But nonetheless, got to tell you, Margo, wouldn't you love to just drive this through the drive-in window of your local fast food restaurant?
Absolutely.
The Too Short Chevrolet Camaro of Alan Russell failing to better the 2.74 second #1 spot we saw earlier by Ken Crum's incredible rear engine Subaru BRAT. One of the most exotic, bizarre, but most powerful machines in the sport of mud racing today is still leading this program. Tom Martin and the Mud Patrol machine moves it up to the starting line as we continue action in the Modified Mud Racing Championships here at Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And Margo with big block Chevrolet power, 541 cubic inches. This is the last machine in the first round with a chance of knocking the spoiled BRAT Subaru out of the #1 spot.
Luck of the draw has put him at the end of the roster his last 6 events, and he's beginning to wonder what kind of omen that is. He would rather be #4 off the gate, but it's been working for him anyway.
There's no question. Tom does like that #4 spot, but the last couple of events where he has pulled almost a dead last number, he's still done unbelievably well. This is going to be the toughest competition for Ken Crum's rear-engine Subaru. The mark to beat, 2.74 seconds. This machine makes unbelievable power. As I said, a big block, 541 cubic inch Chevrolet, fuel-injected, burning methanol fuel, but up in the front of the machine, you see that big blue nitrous oxide canister.
One of the most high-tech machines on the circuit, and if anybody breaks good records, he deserves to do it.
We had a chance to talk to Tom about this machine and his incredible crew a little bit earlier. Although he's a relative newcomer to the sport of mud racing, without a doubt one of the hottest new drivers on the USHRA Association Championship mud racing circuit is young Tom Martin from the state of Indiana. With the Mud Patrol 1932 Ford 5-window coupe, Tom, you managed to win the Fall Nationals in Chicago, Illinois on ESPN, and this machine has really been storming lately.
It's been running real strong.
Well, now, you recently put in a new motor. You had an engine explosion at another event at the very beginning of the year, but this power plant seems to be better than last year's.
It's much better, definitely.
One of the most interesting aspects, however, of the Mud Patrol team is Tom Martin's full-time crew, which is composed of his father and mother, Mr. and Mrs. Martin, John and Norma. And, John, you follow your son all over the nation.
Yes, we've been with him right along.
You follow around in a motorhome, if I'm not mistaken, kind of take this into a full-time vacation.
Right, that's exactly right.
Well, I'm sure Norma is having a good time seeing most of the country.
Yes, I am.
Well, do I even need to ask who the crew is rooting for each and every event here?
Not at all. We were for him.
Martin is now staged up on the starting line. He leaves the line. He's got another fantastic run going out the back of the pit. We're going to have to wait for the elapsed time on this one. Listen to the crowd. They knew that that was a tremendous run. Tom Martin from Portage, Indiana, clapping his hands in there. He's happy with that attempt. The question is, was it good enough? Margo, again, no problems off the starting line for this young man at all.
He has got a lot of engineering gone into this car, frame geometry. He sends out, gets a lot of secret special parts makes it. And
off the starting line, a tremendous launch, blasting through the pit with the left front wheel completely off the ground. The elapsed time to beat was 2.74 seconds. Here's his mark. Unbelievable. 2.76 seconds. By 200ths of a second, Tom Martin in the Mud Patrol is #2. 200ths of a second off #1. What a ride. Airborne out the back of the pit. Now, keep in mind that even though Ken Crum has won this championship round with the rear-engine DeSoto, as we pointed out, at some U.S. Off-Road Association events, we get a chance to see a grudge match between the number 1 and number 2 finishers. And for what we understand, we will be seeing the Mud Patrol 32 Ford against the rear-engine DeSoto-powered Subaru of Ken Crum. And that is going to be wild. We just saw them run within 200ths of a second of each other. We've got an unbelievable battle coming in. Tom Martin's happy nonetheless.
You bet. He's just going to get his mom there, rub a little bit of mud off of his title on the side of the car, and he'll be ready.
After the championship round of action here at the U.S. Off-Road Association Mud Bog Winter Championships in Oklahoma City, the winner, Ken Crum from Kansas City, Kansas, in the rear-engine DeSoto-powered Subaru called Spoiled Brat at 2.74 seconds. Tom Martin, the Portage, Indiana driver in the Mud Patrol 1932 Ford, right behind him at 2.76 seconds. Finishing number 3, the Locomotion supercharged Chevrolet-powered machine from right here in Oklahoma, driven by Larry Jarrett. Number 4, the Spare Parts Chevrolet-powered Jeep, which did a fantastic job at 3.63 seconds. And number 4 for the Ford Vans, Matt ACKER from Denver, Colorado, in the back in black Ford Bronco at 4.44 seconds. We'll be right back at championship action at the U.S. Off-Road Association Winter Championships here in Oklahoma City in just a moment.
We're back in Oklahoma at the arena at the State Fairgrounds, and it's the Spoiled Brat getting ready to stage for his final event run.
This is the celebrated grudge match program that has met with such popularity across the country at the U.S. Off-Road Association national events. The championship final standings have already been determined, but this is, like I said, a little battle between the best, as it were. The top 2 finishers, the 2 quickest elapsed times in competition, will battle it out here for a special additional prize. Now, this is Ken Crum with the rear-engine DeSoto-powered Subaru that we saw set the lowest elapsed time of this event at 2.74 seconds. Margo, this machine is capable of doing it again. Clearing out the 331 cubic inch DeSoto Hemi, the 30-year-old power plant that put this machine number 1. Crum is ready. Another fantastic ride. Crum out the back door on another unbelievable charge.
And he's really excited about that run. He was happy for the very beginning, and that might be the one that works.
There's no question about that. That was definitely the one that worked. Shutting down the engine, Crum inside the very tight confines of that dragster-style cockpit. He's getting out to the applause of the crowd. And here is the elapsed time. 2.66 seconds. Almost a tenth of a second quicker than even his best run in the first round of competition. And Ken Crum shows you just how much effort it takes to drive one of these machines. An unbelievable launch, Margo. Perfect traction.
When you're on, you're on. Another ditto of a great run. He just perfected it.
2.66 seconds sideways coming out of the pit. Look at that launch. Man, that thing didn't waste any time getting up and on top of the mud, just skimming the surface with those DOT tires and thundering. Look at the flash bulbs going off in the crowd. They knew it was a championship effort. Airborne out of the pit. Well, we've just received word that Tom Martin's Mud Patrol machine experienced some engine problems in his championship run in the first round. Therefore, the number 3 finisher makes it as an alternate. Larry Jarrett, supercharged Chevrolet-powered machine from Oklahoma, leaves the line. He has to run an unbelievable pass. And I'll tell you what, taking down the finish line banner, Jarrett was completely out of control at the finish line. If you watch when we get the replay here, his hands came off the steering wheel at about the 80-foot marker, and he's still thrilled. That's probably one of the best runs he's ever made in this brand new piece of equipment. Only the 10th time out, as you pointed out, his 5th indoor show ever. He's thrilled. Doug Hansen, the event director, patting him on the back. Watch this. He leaves the starting line. The wheel's cocked a little bit to the right-hand side of the lane. He leaves the starting line and nails the throttle. It's up and heading for the outer boundary of the pit. And here he comes. Watch the rear tire clip the finish line pole, taking it right down. What a ride. The elapsed time, 3.41 seconds, was not good enough to knock down Ken Crum. The Subaru wins it all, but this was the wildest ride of the night. Trying to keep it in the pit, hitting the banners now sideways. His hands come off the steering wheel. He clips the pole and does everything he can to stop this thing.
Didn't keep a smile off of Larry's face, though, did it?
You got to have guts to smile after a run like that. There's no question about it. I'll tell you, Ken Crum wins it all in the championship modified mud class here at Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. We'll be back with more action here at the U.S. Off-Road Association Winter in just a moment. It takes an awful lot of people to coordinate a U.S. Hot Rod Association National Championship event. In fact, over 30 people come together just on the floor of each National Championship program to try and get things to go well. But they all take their directions from one man. He's known as the U.S. Hot Rod Association Event Director at each program. And with me is Doug Hansen, who is one of the newest on the U.S. Hot Rod Association trail. And Doug, you've already developed a reputation as one of the best.
I hope so. I'll try.
That indeed you do. In fact, it's quite an accomplishment to be able to get so many people together to get this show underway.
Yeah, it is. It's hard to get everyone together sometimes because the time factor is the worst. No one wants to get here at 2 o'clock, but if they all get here at 6, then it's hard having a meeting with everybody at once.
Well, indeed, you do a fine job, but there's one thing that intrigues a lot of people with the unbelievable amount of noise down here. We're talking over 100 decibels at times. You can't get the word across, literally not the word across, and you have to use some rather interesting techniques to communicate.
That's true. There's a lot of times if I'm right in their ear, they can hear me, but otherwise you have to do a lot of different signs, such as I need a hook, or I need a hook with a lift. Some trucks don't have a lift capability. If a truck breaks its axle and it's locked up and he can't roll, you have to have a truck that can lift. And usually your wreckers are way back in the hole, so you say I need a hook with a lift. There's a whole bunch of other signs. Cut your engine, start it up, bring them in, different staging techniques, but a lot of them are just common sense. A lot of them have to go with them ahead of time.
Some of them are the equivalent of modern-day hieroglyphics, I might add.
Yeah, I look pretty stupid sometimes. I really do.
Well, regardless of the way it might appear, this young man is the man who's responsible for putting on these programs across the country, and he's doing one incredible job. Doug Hansen, the event director for the U.S. Hot Rod Association, one of the more animated individuals in motorsports. We're back at Oklahoma City's own Oklahoma State Fairgrounds Arena. The U.S. Hot Rod Association Winter Championships, and from mud competition, we move now to the pulling surface. The 175-foot-long pulling surface with a 60,000-pound static weight pulling sled in force as our first exhibition vehicle comes out for the evening. And from the small town of Mantua, Ohio, just south of Cleveland, this is Butch Schultz with one of the most beautiful fiberglass-bodied funny car pullers in the sport today.
Now, Brett, you're used to seeing vehicles like this on the asphalt, but what do they do when they're hooked up to that pulling equipment?
Well, actually,
how dangerous is this?
Oh, it's not very dangerous at all. The major difference between these machines and the alcohol or nitro-burning funny cars of the drag strip wars is the fact that the engine placement of these machines is quite a bit closer to the front end, and indeed they carry a lot more weight. This is a supercharged, fuel-injected, methanol-burning Ford Wedge power plant. 460 cubic inches on a Ford-Tempo body. Schultz takes the green light, and it's wheels up for the Magnum Force Ford Tempo funny car. And Schultz shuts her down at about the 150-foot marker, but if nothing else, a phenomenal indication of the power available in the Magnum Force Ford funny car. I'll tell you, if you noticed while Butch was backing up to the sled, he had the escape hatch up. Well, look closely, and you'll see on the inside of that escape hatch a beautifully polished aluminum plate that he uses for a rear view mirror. Here's the replay of that incredible launch. The wheels 5 feet in the air, Margo. That is power.
Now, did he shut off prematurely?
Indeed he did, but on an exhibition pull, obviously Butch Schultz is not under any obligation to make as hard an attempt as he possibly can. But you will see this machine in competition at U.S. Hot Rod Association pulls, which have funny car pulling competition. A phenomenal exhibition of power by this beautiful.
It's got to be a great feeling when that front end comes up and you're pulling that load.
Just the same thing as about a 15-second drag strip wheel stand. But that's not all the exhibition machines we have coming up. There's Butch Schultz, the driver of the incredible Magnum Force machine. Like I said, out of the small town of Mantua, Ohio, he's not the only championship race driver based in that little town. Jim Bailey, a supercharged funny car racer on the national event trail in drag racing, is based out of that town, as well as 2 of the sport's better-known sprint car pilots. So Mantua is definitely an auto racing town. And we're receiving word, Margo, from down on the floor that indeed it was a supercharger drive belt, the rubber belt that indeed drives the supercharger from the crankshaft, that shredded on that particular run. So Butch Schultz shut it off before the engine came apart as well.
In machines like this, you can bet that the drivers become as one with their machine. It's a good thing you stayed with us, folks, because the arena here in Oklahoma City is about to rumble with the roar of the pulling dragster out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Bob Bauman and his canned heat. And lucky for us, Brett was able to talk to him earlier about this spectacular vehicle.
Well, the influence of the sport of drag racing in the world of truck and tractor pulling has been great. Pennsylvania's Bob Bauman has taken that influence to the extreme. This is the brand new canned heat supercharged methanol burning pulling dragster. And this machine, completed just recently, has already proven to be one of the toughest in the sport. Bob, this machine is already putting out a phenomenal amount of power.
Yes, it is. We get about 2,000 horsepower out of it.
Well, with the aluminum Rodex Chevrolet, keeping within the Chevy train of thought that your previous pulling machines in both the four-wheel drive class and the two-wheel drive class have proved, this machine is already one of the strongest of its type, considering there are only 3 done. And you completed this machine in just a little bit over 4 weeks.
Yes, that's right. 4 weeks and 2 days we had it on the track.
I'll tell you, your crew must have been thrashing. Now, this machine is a lot different, although it may appear similar to some of the drag racers that you see on the quarter-mile drag strips of the nation. It's a lot different. In fact, this machine weighs about 5 times as much as your average supercharged dragster.
Yes, it does. Neighborhood of 6,000 pounds.
Well, 6,000 pounds compared to 1,850 pounds for most supercharged dragsters is quite a bit different, but it's needed for the traction on the dirt course. Now, you'll see that we have the aerodynamic side pods and, of course, the enclosed canopy that are normally used for aerodynamics at high speeds. Even the wing is functional, although not really needed at this kind of speed. But, Bob, the machine certainly presents the drag racing image to the indoor crowd.
That was our goal, to make it look like a tall fueler.
There's no question that Bob Bauman, in just a few short weeks, has certainly succeeded in that.
This run is about to start.
I'll tell you, this machine, although it's brand new, has already made a phenomenal number of fans across the country. And Bob Bauman has created, without a doubt, a lot of enthusiasm for these brand new dragster-style machines. The aluminum Chevrolet Rodex ready to thunder. He leaves the starting line with 60,000 pounds in tow. The front end coming up for Bauman on a tremendous pull, in and out of the throttle, and almost down to the finish line. An unbelievable piece of equipment. The enclosed plexiglass canopy keeping Bob Bauman obviously somewhat confined. But regardless, it is still an amazing piece of equipment. Not very much different appearing than the asphalt dragsters. Here on the replay, you can see the machine leaving the starting grid very, very easily. A very minimum, I should say, of tire spin. Then at about 75 feet out, Bauman plants his right foot and just goes for a ride, Margo.
It's a beautiful finesse run.
They are actually somewhat graceful, really, compared to some of the other machines in the sport of pulling. But still an amazing new piece of equipment you're going to be hearing a lot more about. From a head-on view, take a look at the aerodynamic tricks that are consistent with the current 280-mile-per-hour status of the asphalt dragsters. This particular machine doesn't need any aerodynamic tricks to put up. Look at Bauman's head hitting the dash there as he comes down out of that huge wheel stand. But a tremendous round of applause from the fans as they certainly enjoyed that piece of equipment in that exhibition run. We still have more action to come. The Battle of the Monster Trucks. One of the few times you'll see up close the differences between conventional monsters and the brand new tanks. Coming up next as we continue action here at the U.S. Harmon Association Winter Championships. We'll be back in a moment. The 1988 U.S. Hot Rod Association Winter Championships of Mudbog Racing in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Along with Margo King, I'm Brett Kepner. The one and only Bigfoot, the original king of the monster trucks from St. Louis, Missouri, kicked things off here in a special exhibition. Now, this is not actual competition in monster trucks, but actually a special exhibition displaying the differences between two of the most popular types of monsters out. This, of course, is the original 14,000-pound monster that started it all. Out of Bob Chandler's Midwest Four-Wheel Drive and Performance Center in St. Louis, Missouri, Rick Hooser doing the driving of the supercharged carbureted Ford known as Bigfoot.
And he's in the process right now of track preparation.
Yeah. The classic jump, unbelievable height even off the rear wheels as Rick Hooser bounces the front end almost all the way down the dirt course and now prepares to turn her around and do it one more time.
Using that rear steering with the rear wheel, a little operating switch on the door there manipulates that truck around the track.
No question, the independent front and rear steering helps Rick Hooser park Bigfoot, but to be honest with you, he can park it anywhere he wants to. As the machine backs up, Rick Hooser gets ready to make one more attempt at the 4 cars down on the floor of the Oklahoma State Fairgrounds Arena. Here comes the classic Bigfoot hit, up and over, landing on the 4th and final car. Hooser gets ready to spin it around, and I'll tell you, Margo, as anybody can see, the fans come to see Bigfoot wherever it appears.
Rich has been on the Bigfoot team for 10 years, and it wasn't until about 4 years ago that he started to drive this machine.
Well, it's Bob Chandler, who operates, of course, the entire Bigfoot enterprise, takes a tremendous amount of time and preparation training the drivers that are lucky enough to get behind the wheel of this infamous machine. Now, this is, of course, one of the Bigfoots with the brand new 1988 sheet metal panels, and it is a classic brand new Ford piece. Heading one more time for a near clear jump, bouncing all over on the floor. And as you can see, the crowd loves every minute that Rick's out there. The hydraulic hood coming up, and Rick Hooser will step out and salute the crowd as only he can.
Rich, what do you think? Let's hear it for Rich Hooser.
We're looking at the replay of the last jump right now as Rick Hooser brings up the speed to about 35 miles per hour normally on a hit in an indoor arena. You'll see him just barely get out of the throttle, bring the front end down, and then sail that 18 or 14, I should say, 1,000-pound machine. Look at that unbelievable bouncing all over the track.
And these trucks they're really starting to beef up the bottom, the undercarriage of these trucks to take all this abuse.
It's true. Hitting the cars is no longer just for fun and games. The fans expect to see the hardest hit possible. Take a look. But, like I said, Bigfoot is not the only monster here. Margo, this is one of the new breed of monster machines.
From Virginia Beach, Virginia, we've got the Virginia Beach Beast.
You're looking, race fans, at a 1984 Chevy Blazer body with a supercharged Chevrolet big block power plant behind the driver, based on an M4 Army tank, 23,000 pounds of monster machine. Look at the hit he's taking. Now, if you notice, there is no windshield in the Virginia Beach Beast. In fact, there is no, or they did put a grill in it, but the reason there's no windshield in the truck tonight is because during a practice session this afternoon, Mike Katz, the driver of the Virginia Beach Beast, disintegrated the windshield on one of his landings.
You've got to be real careful with those tanks. They just don't have the suspension that Bigfoot's got.
As a matter of fact, they don't have any suspension at all. You can see that when they hit. It's a rough ride up there. Nowhere near as soft as the huge inflated tires of a regular four-wheel drive monster machine. But at 23,000 pounds, look at the Chevrolet that's underneath that Virginia Beach Beast. There's Mike Katz. 23,000 pounds is hard to stop, ladies and gentlemen. I'll tell you, you're going to be seeing an awful lot of these incredible tank chassis machines in Monster Truck Wars, U.S. Hot Rod Association national events from coast to coast. But Virginia Beach Beast, as we see on the replay, could definitely plow through anything, Margo.
Now, Mike says he even has to take into consideration the body style of the car that he first hits, because that could change the whole way he'll launch into the air or not. Some cars he flattens immediately.
I was going to say, take a look at the last car in line there. There is nothing left of that piece. Looking at it from a lower angle, you'll be able to see the shock that Mike takes in the driver's seat. Keep an eye on his helmet, and you can see just how much brutalizing that young man has to take inside that cockpit. Watch on the landing, Mike's head. Wham! That is a landing.
Believe me, he would not rather be doing anything else. This is his life.
That's true. Bill Towns, the owner and creator of the Virginia Beach Beast, and Mike Katz and the rest of the crew travel from coast to coast. But you're looking at Ford and Chevrolet, side by side, two of the most popular machines of the Monster Truck Trail today. We'll be back in just a minute with more from the U.S. Hot Rod Association Winter Championships here in Oklahoma City. Incredible Virginia Beach Beast tank Chevrolet. Mike Katz's job as a rough one. With no suspension of that thing, Mike, it's a rough ride.
It gets bad sometimes. There, as you said, there's no suspension, and you take most of the abuse yourself inside the truck.
Well, you can see that each and every time you go over the cars, you just get thrown around inside there.
It gets rough, but, you know, it's a job, and I enjoy it, so.
I know you love it, and Bill Towns, the owner, is obviously proud of the way you drive the machine. And speaking of driving it, there's no steering wheel in that machine. It actually has hand controls, right?
Yeah, it's got two steering brakes. Pull one brake to turn right and pull the other one to turn left.
So in the running gear all the way up to the steering, it's just like a tank or a bulldozer all the way around?
All the running gear is the exact tank transmission and everything, just like it came.
Well, if nothing else, you've already proven that you make it look easy, as Mike Katz with the Virginia Beach Beast is becoming fastly one of the quickest and strongest superstars of the monster truck circuit. Well, the 1988 U.S. Hot Rod Association Winter Championships here at Oklahoma City's Oklahoma State Fairgrounds Arena was another incredible event, Margo.
Well, the fans came here to see incredible equipment, great horsepower, and terrific competitors. They were not disappointed.
Well, I'll tell you, this isn't all the action you're going to be seeing on the 1988 U.S. Hot Rod Association Tour. In fact, we'll be back with more championship action in the weeks to come. On behalf of myself, Brett Kepner, and Margo King, thanks for being with us, and we'll see you soon.